I am so excited to introduce you to today's guest. Martin is a seasoned hotel development and finance executive focused on international sustainable strategy and execution. With over 25 years of experience in the hospitality industry, Martin has worked with luxury hotel brands such as Four Seasons, Melia Hotels International, and most recently, Corinthia Hotels. In his role as Chief Development Officer, Martin was responsible for overseeing brand growth strategy and establishing brand standards in key markets through new developments. Martin, thank you so much for being on the show today.
You're welcome, Francesca. Thank you for having me.
So, there's a lot of florists out there that are struggling with keeping either their retail shops open or still being in love with the wedding industry. And they're curious, how do we actually break into the hotel world? Like, what is the hospitality industry all about? So the first thing that I really want to ask you is, what should florists keep in mind when working with hotels?
So before we go there, first of all, can I just tell you guys, not just you, but all the florists that are listening to this, that a hotel without flowers wouldn't be a proper hotel. I love flowers and they put such a different spin on things. That thank you for you guys going through the hassle and doing this, and for all the talents that you're bringing to this industry that can otherwise be very boring and dry.
Oh, wow.
So,
well, thank you. Thank you for the compliment.
And of course, I mean, that's the whole point of doing this, right? I mean, the beauty that adds the value to what we're doing here. I mean, I'm talking about brick and mortars and boring finances, and you guys are talking about beautiful flowers. And we're here to bring them both together. So can you repeat the question again, please? I'm sorry.
Apparently, you were so excited about our floral design. Okay, so my question is, what should florists keep in mind when working with hotels? So we're trying to approach the hotels that you are actually developing. What are some kind of industry tips or some insider tips that you could give florists when they're trying to work with these hotels?
So I think there's a couple of points here. One would be that remember that you're dealing with people. Yes, they can be, big, scary executives and big hotels. And I mean, you can go from like a small boutique hotel to a multiple 1,000-room hotel in Vegas, and nobody ever knows who's who and how big these people are and how important they're. We're dealing with people. Keep that in mind. You're just like when you do flowers for a wedding, you're doing flowers for the general public that walks through a hotel. You're not doing them for the general manager. You're not presenting them for the owners, although you obviously have to make sure you're aligned with costs and brand standards and how they look. But why are hotels actually doing this? In principle, in the end, they bring flowers into the hotel. They hire you florists to come and make the hotel prettier, more beautiful, create experiences, whatever you want. People's taking Instagram pictures in front of them. But in the end, it is the customer who walks through the door, everyone off the street, no, hopefully not everyone, but Joe Schmo off the street, a guest that comes to a hotel on a vacation, for a wedding, for a conference, you name it, even just to come in to go to the restaurant, and to make their experience more pleasant. And that's what a florist does. By principle nature of the business. I mean, you guys all love flowers. You love working with flowers. Why? Because I think they're beautiful, and you can be creative and you can do a lot of nice things with them. I would just not forget that, because you can get very caught up in the whole corporate world of things and the relationship and the business side of things, the proposals and the costs and so on and so forth. Do not let the human aspect slide, and the natural thing, the natural beauty and the human experience that go together.
I agree with you 100%. I'm always telling not only my students, but also my clients, like, flowers really transform space. And what is the point of that? Well, it is to make a big impact on the guest. So to create that incredible, very memorable arrival experience that goes back to having that human moment, like what you just touched upon. So I love that you brought that up. Now, let's say that florists are trying to pitch to a hotel. How do properties actually determine their floral budget?
I think you might be a little bit surprised by the answer that I have, but I'm also speaking for myself mostly in my limited experience. But they don't. They come up with a number by pretty much looking around what flowers cost, what people charge, what others are doing, and creating their own set of numbers based on very limited experience. They don't have the luxury of having a florist being their advisor, which would be my advice if this was a hotel owners podcast, but I would tell them actually hire a florist on a consulting basis for a little while and help them put your numbers and your budget together, because I think you could have a much better setup and then obviously communicate with the florist world a lot better. But what this comes back to is they have certain brand standards, and within the brand standards, they determine how big or little or frequent or not, or dead or alive, fake or real of an arrangement they want to have. Do they want to have one pot of orchid that just sits there the whole time because the brand standards are very minimalistic and very sparse and very empty, so to speak? Or do they want to go all out and spend $1 million because they want the whole hotel lobby to be a live jungle? I mean, that part is determined within the brand standards, which is more of a design architectural type of exercise rather than a budget exercise. Then they usually come back and say, how can we make this happen? What do others charge? What does a rose cost? And we want 1 million roses. Okay, that's very easy. It's $1 million, right? I mean, whatever that might be, plus the labor and everything. So it's a very fluid process, and one that's not a very educated one. I'm giving you a little sneak peek under the skirt here because it's simply an opportunity, I think, for florists out there to show value, because they know exactly how to price flowers. They know exactly how to set a budget for an install that may have a huge impact or may have just a very subtle background impact. And I think if any advice, it could be that build that into your proposal or into your skill set to actually educate the owners or the hotel managers or whatever on what you're actually doing. And because I know that's a burden, nobody knows where to start, where this exercise ends in a hotel. And there's been too many times where I've overheard the design and construction team or the architects or the owners talking about this. Oh, we want flowers. We need this to be, we want a flower boutique. We want a flower shop. We want a big experience around flowers. And in my experience, then they get busy and sidetracked with all the other costs of building the hotel. And in the end, this falls flat by the wayside, where somebody, when the hotel opens, comes up and says, oh, yeah, come on, quickly get us a couple of arrangements on the front desk because we need to make it look pretty. So
for those listening, when you first heard Martin's answer of they don't really have a budget, I'm sure there might have been a few eye rolls, but Martin, you have been in consulting as well for 10 years now, roughly, can we say? And your job is to literally sometimes put together these budgets or to at least review the budgets. And the fact of the matter is it's kind of like a smoke screen. So a lot of times florists will go in and ask what the budget is, and they'll get one of two answers. They'll get, I'm not telling you. It was literally a student last week told me that's the response that she received, or make me an offer, or we don't have a budget. So a lot of times hotels use this budget as a power play because they don't actually have a number, but it can be very intimidating for a florist who's just going in. So like you said, we're the experts. We know what things cost. It is up to us to ask the right questions. And this is an amazing opportunity to educate this potential hotel client on what things cost and how they meet their whatever idea it is that they have in their minds to have either the full display of florals or, like you said, small touch points. So I love that we really went in depth with how do properties determine their floral budgets, because oftentimes the florist can actually determine the floral budget. They just have to ask the right questions. What we've been talking a lot about and what keeps coming up is this term brand standards. And if you've been in the hospitality industry, or if you're currently there, or you're familiar with it, it's a very common kind of two words that we throw around. But for those listening that maybe have never really heard this concept of brand standards, what should florists keep in mind to adhere to them? So what are they, and what should florists do to stick to them?
Well, first, I think you brought up a very good point. First is understanding what they really are. And to take the mystery out of this, scary word, there's nothing special to it. A brand standard is simply, what color shared upholstery do I have? What type of marble is on the floor? How do the employees dress? How do you talk to clients? What do the flowers look like? So a lot of times there's a very philosophical, very high level kind of marketing exercise behind developing these brand standards when it comes to the floral aspect of it. But again, going back to what we discussed in the very beginning here, Francesca, the flowers are an enhancement, they're a beautification, they're an experience booster, so to speak, in a hotel. That's why they're not, in many cases, not really defined very specifically. They may be as open-ended as they got to be live flowers and they got to look pretty, or they might be as detailed as a brand book that outlines every specific type of flower for every time of the year, for every size. They actually probably show you specific examples of arrangements and so on and so forth. Again, one experience is, and this is particularly true the higher up in the luxury hotel world you go, or let's say the more on the boutique side, on non-corporate level brands like your big five groups that you, hotel names that you may know worldwide. But when you go to some smaller groups that might be even of a higher standard of hotel design, you often find that the owners or the brand standards that the manager represents for the owner is actually just as impactful as possible, as memorable as possible, as luxurious as possible, right? It doesn't mean you can't use a 100,000 carnation, although they're considered to be cheap flowers, to make a very impactful, massive install and give them, or maybe it's a smaller number, but to fulfill that criteria for brand standard, although you're using a very cheap flower. This is a random example that I'm coming up with in my limited knowledge of flowers, but it doesn't always have to be an orchid, or it doesn't always have to be the most expensive flower to fulfill the luxury requirement of a brand standard. And again, it comes back to education. It comes back to working with your client. It comes back to actually offering the knowledge that you have as a florist, knowing what lasts how long, knowing what costs what, knowing how you can survive in your business, because everyone needs to make a profit, right? The hotel is doing this because having a beautiful, massive arrangement in a luxury setting might allow them to charge more to their guests, which goes down to the bottom line again. So the same is true for the florist as well, but offer the knowledge that, you know, your brand standards are great. We understand them because they're in line with everything in your hotel is white or blue or steel or wood or whatever. And the flowers need to represent that. We need to add to the overall design and not distract from it and not break it or take it apart. In some cases, that might be true. Some people might want to have a complete opposite. Like if the hotel is painted all black and everything is very subdued, having some, you know, red rose explosion might actually be exactly what they're going for. But that communication and that process of understanding what it is the hotel is looking for, and then answering and offering the knowledge that you have and the value you can bring to the table as a florist, of saying, hey, look, we know exactly how to make that room pop, or we know exactly how to turn somebody's head when they walk past the front desk, but may not otherwise even recognize that there's something there. I mean, that's all there is. That's why the industry spends money on flowers. They want the impact. They want people to feel more luxurious and obviously spend more money because of that.
I have so many florists just in our floral industry that have expressed interest in approaching hotels, but are concerned that, you know, I just don't know enough, or I'm not stable enough in my business yet, or maybe I don't have enough experience, where really I think they're discounting how much experience they do have and the knowledge that they do have on their product, on their pricing, on how to run their business. And the hotel is really clueless, but it seems very intimidating. And so any florist that's listening to this right now who has been considering approaching hotels, please take this episode as a boost of confidence that you do actually know what you're talking about. And by asking the right questions and figuring out what these brand standards are and being able to meet their brand standards, then you are actually a very valuable asset to the hotel. Because like Martin even mentioned, like a lot of times hotels are able to charge higher pricing for their rooms because of your floral designs, or maybe it's a better event space for potential weddings and events because there's already flowers in the hotel. So don't discredit how much you actually already know. So Martin, one last thing I want to ask you before we go is, what is your best advice for creating a strong and long-term partnership between the hotel and the florist?
I think as a summary of everything we discussed, what people in business in general, but specifically in this industry, value the most is if you're a problem solver. If you help them alleviate some of the things that they are not familiar with, that's otherwise considered one of those, to-do list items that's a little bit of a nuisance. You kind of push it back and back and back because every email, every call from your superior or your owner or something, all of a sudden becomes more important than dealing with the flowers, for example. Um, Adding value by providing a solution, by providing knowledge, by providing stress relief, so to speak, just like anyone else, is always going to put you right where you want to be. I mean, why do we go to a doctor? Because then they alleviate our pain and we have no choice, right? We don't want to start doctoring around on ourselves. Trust me, to my knowledge, and while there may be some out there, I'm just not aware of them, but to my knowledge, I don't know of a single hotel that's owned by a former florist and managed by a former florist. So nobody is really going to start becoming their own doctor by making their own flowers in a hotel. You're still considered the expert. To strengthen that relationship, play that role. Very simple. Present your expertise. Be proud of your expertise. You don't have to be cocky or arrogant or whatever about it, but you're an equal. You have a business just like they have a business. They're the experts in their business. You're not coming in telling them how to run their hotel. You're coming in showing them how to get more money out of their hotel potentially, or how to just simply take one to-do list item off their table by giving them exactly what they're looking for, which is a great flower install that's very impactful, that serves the requirements or brand standards that the hotel operator might have, or manager or owner. And that's it. You walk away and you let them be happy with that. And that's really communicating that the right way and approaching them with that and saying, look, we know flowers. This is not a question about, do we do flowers better than you or better than somebody else? No, we know what we're doing. We are florists, period. But what can we do for you? What's more to that? Because a rose is a rose, right?
Yeah. No, I love that. This episode, I have like an additional confidence boost. So thank you so much for coming on and kind of spilling the tea from a hotel development point of view. So on the corporate side, and as you're building these hotels and basically being the liaison between ownership and architects and potential vendors, and helping just florists understand what is it actually that hotels are looking for and how can we get our foot in the door, kind of with some insider tips. I really appreciate your time. One last thing before we go, I want to know, what is a quote or a saying that people spout but you believe is complete BS?
Oh, wow. That's a good question. I guess, well, there's one that comes to mind. It's actually a very short one, but, everyone has just gotten used to saying, you only live once. Do this, you only live once. Go spend a ton of money in a luxury hotel because you only live once. So the whole bucket list idea. So you only live once is probably one that's always gotten under my skin in a way, because it's actually not really true, because you actually live every day repeatedly over and over and over and over, but you only die once, right? So I think it's kind of the opposite of what the old saying goes, but that's just something I like to hold on to for myself.
I'm laughing because I completely agree. And I always say, like, no, actually you just die once. So I think we share that in common. Martin, thank you so much for being on the show. I know people can find you on your website, which is prediam.com. That's PREDIAM. And also on LinkedIn. If you found this episode helpful, please give us a 5-star review and leave us a review as well. And we'll see you in the next episode.